Three, two. From high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly, this is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for joining us. Share this with your friends and your fishing partners. Also, as you probably have heard before, you can watch these episodes on YouTube if you like to consume content that way. If you do, listen to it, leave a like or click the follow. And probably the best time for me to listen to these things is on the way to the river. That's a good time to listen to these episodes and kind of get your mindset in the way that you're gonna fish for that day. At least remind yourself of the things you might want to try. Also, I'd like to say hi to all the folks that I see on the river that listen. Thank you for listening to the podcast and watching it on YouTube. And glad to meet you all. Really, in Middle Tennessee, there's really a great group of folks that fish. Just 99.9% of them are extremely nice and want to help um, and are just good people. So it's good to talk to y'all and good to meet you. And I hope y'all catch all the fish out there, except for the ones I'm trying to catch, of course. But we've got a few episodes that are really good coming in the next few months, including catching triple tail on the fly fishing the Piedmont area of Alabama. I've got something lined up with a boutique boat builder right here in Middle Tennessee, a great dude. So got a lot of, as well as a lot of other interesting stuff in coming up in the works. It's early Sunday morning, and the dogs I don't think are even up yet. So if you hear them, that means they got up and something's outside they feel like they need to bark at. So, but let's get started. I want to talk about soft hackles today. I want to do a few different ways to fish them. So under a nymph, I like to use that in certain situations under a dry. That's pretty fun. And swing them by themselves or with some of their friends. And I'll get to that in a minute. But so what's a soft hackle and what do they imitate? Just kind of just a quick definition. Bugs rising under the water, headed to the top. That's kind of the way that I look at them. I don't get too technical in that, but just think of it as a bug rising off the bottom, become an adult. So, pro tip on these though, as they're moving, it's kind of like a fish trying to get a running shot at them. So you can use a little bit bigger hooks on these. Just think of the fish eating them on the run, like they're going through the drive-through at McDonald's, Burger King, or Starbucks. I guess that's probably the best way. So there's no doubt when they eat, which makes this type of one of these especially types of ways to fish these things are just an absolute blast. So, what's the best time of the year? Pretty much if you're seeing feeding fish and they're not eating dries, meaning their head's not popping up, there's no bubbles left on top, where they come up and gulp down something and grab a little bit of air and push it back out. So that's the best way to see it. See feeding fish that aren't eating dry. So what are they doing? How do I know if the fish are rising to emergers? You'll look for their backs and their tails. And what they're doing there is normally, if they're doing it time after time, they've kind of got a pattern going. Um, you can look for their backs and their tails when pushing water, that sort of thing. So they're seeking emerging bugs, and you're seeking those fish that are pushing that water without their head sticking up. That's the main thing that I try to remember. They're not sucking down or coming completely up to eat. If that's the case, then by all means stick on a dry fly because that's one of the best ways to catch fish. But if they're not doing that, if they're not showing their heads, showing their mouths, then just look for their backs and tails. Those, and they're not necessarily coming up all the time and breaking the water. Sometimes it's just a push of water without their head sticking up. So let's talk about fishing them under the nymph, or let's just talk about the nymph. I like to tie them on when someone isn't exactly getting a great drift. It's kind of like cheating on an exam, maybe not as serious though, and you can be more productive without feeling so bad about yourself. I like to put them above a nymph. They're versatile. So versatile. Say that again. Versatile. I had to look that one up. Anyway, um, they're real easy. It's real easy to cover the water more vertically. We look at ways to cover water horizontally, but we don't always think of vertically. So, how many different uh, spaces in the water column can we get our fly into and find out where they're fishing, which is one of the ways to do it. But what I like to do is if I'm tying above the nymph, and it doesn't really matter if you're fishing drop shot, Euro, high sticking, it doesn't matter what you're doing really. Under an indicator, doesn't matter. You can adjust these soft hackles. Just if you tie a loop and wrap it around your main line. Stick the end of the loop, the cut end of the loop of the line through the loop. Rest that on a knot, and then you can raise it up and down pretty good. Then tie that on there. So you got a loop, wrap it around the main line, feed your tippet through the loop, pull it tight, rest it on a knot, then tie your fly on, your soft hackle on, and you can move that up and down and rest it on different knots that you have. If you're like me, I don't mind having some knots in my leader for that sort of thing if I'm fishing. Some people get all wigged out about it. I really don't. But anyway, which is a few inches of tippet sticking out there, you can tie that on above the nymph. You can make adjustments with that loop around the main line. It's hard to explain, but if you sit and think about it, you're just tying a loop, sticking the tag end through the loop, cinching it down on the main line above or below your nymph, and then resting it on a knot. That's really all you're doing. Then tie your bug on, you're good to go. You can also have different sizes and colors and different weights with beads, without, red butts, green butts, natural butts. It's a really versatile way to fish. You can use it in all kinds of nymphing, like I said, under a bobber, Euro nymphing, high sticking, drop shot, all that stuff. You name it, you can do it, and it's good. It's good to put under a nymph too, even though you're probably going to the fish are probably likely going to see it as it rises up. They're going to be looking for it further up in the water column. It's really good if you're not getting a great, so you're not getting a good dead drift, or you're not even sometimes when you're not really trying to get a good dead drift, maybe a little bit of pressure. That that extra soft hackle off the bottom of the nymph looks like an emerger, but it's just a little bit lower in the water column. So if that's the case, that's a good time to have it underneath that nymph, is whenever you're trying to do it that way. Again, I like to do it when somebody just can't seem to get a great drift. I'll hang one under there, to where it's 6, 8, 10 inches underneath. And we can pick up some fish that way. So just again, very versatile. So we can also fish it under a dry. So think of it, a rule of thumb is adults need to emerge. Think of the bugs as they're growing up. So like kind of like emergers are kind of the teenage years, whenever they're going up through the water column trying to get to the top. So think of it that way, which kind of gives you an option there. If a lot of people around here, and I know that there are a lot of other places that people will fish a dry dropper with a midge underneath. Well, this is just another option, another quiver in your arsenal there to fish an emerger. You can get an emerger with a bead, without a bead. You can fish them in the film. You can do a lot of different things with these under a dry. The best time to fish them is normally going to be in the morning or afternoon. That can be best times, but you can pretty much fish them all day as long as you see some feeding fish. Some bugs like to hatch in low light. That's something to keep in mind. So you're kind of imitating that hatching bug. Transition periods from on the front of the hatch to the rear of the hatch, or the as the hatch kind of fizzles out. Slow, drizzly days. Think of BWO weather. That's a great time to fish it. But remember, they're also good in different types of weather. So where would you fish them? Obviously, where you see fish rising is really a good time to do it. Not necessarily the whole time to do it, the best time to do it, but a good time to do it. And just so effective areas around shoals and gravel bars, maybe even some side eddies, you'll see those bugs coming out of there. Various other types of water. It doesn't hurt to kind of explore for yourself and find out where they are. But above a hatch and below a hatch, fish through the hatch, meaning if I see them coming off on, let's say, just a gravel bar or a shoal, I'm going to fish that whole shoal top to bottom. And top to bottom, I mean, in this case, two different ways. From the top, meaning upstream, down through the shoal to downstream. Also, again, searching vertically, which is a great way to do it. So more on fishing under dries. Not all bugs make it to the top, so you don't always have to be swinging them. Some die off and they're just kind of tumbling in the current, and I think that's something that we often forget. So under dry does make sense, but at the last of the drift, the last part of the drift where you're just the bug, your dry just begins to start to drag, you can have a soft hackle on there under there and it'll trigger a bite. Now then you have to think about adding and taking away distance from the dry. So adding tippet, taking away tippet to get a little bit different swing. So work with that. Don't just stay the same distance. It's like adjusting. I say this all the time, and you've heard me before. Um, if you don't do anything else, adjust the distance between the fly and the bobber. So this is the same thing. If you don't do anything else and you want to fish it under a dry, if you don't do anything, if you got one soft tackle, let's say, and one dry, then that's all you brought to the river for some reason. If you go back to the fly box episode a couple of episodes ago, you're kind of thinking that maybe we're starting to get down to just taking a few flies. And really we're just taking a few fly boxes, I guess I should probably say. But let's just let's just say that that's what you're doing. Add some tippet, take away some tippet so that you've got some different variables under there because you never know what's going to trigger a fish. I mean, everybody has their theories. People in fly fishing, including me, can theorize to death on any subject, but in reality, we don't know exactly what the fish is going to do. If you just came off the river and had a really good day, you think you do, but I promise you, you'll go back tomorrow, next week, next month, and you that will not work. So you have to have a different game plans for different days, ready to try different things. Um, so make several passes through at one length, and then add a little length between the dry and the soft tackle. I start shallow in super soft water. Uh, and just work from there if I can. But they can be more aggressive to the bottom in the faster water. So weight of the soft hackle or soft hackles, and I'll get to multiple here in a minute, is part of the combination. More weight equals more depth, obviously. You can also affect emergence of the soft hackle just by moving your rod tip around and that sort of thing, making it emerge at different times and make it kind of fall and go back up throughout your drift if you want to. But I don't know. Who really knows what works and what doesn't? That's up to the fish. So it allows you to cover more water, like I said, vertically if you're fishing it under a dry. We spend a lot of time and give a lot of thought to cover water horizontally, but like I said, we got to get down into thinking more vertically too. Just an observation that I've seen over time. They're great for searching out fish and seeing where fish are eating too. Even if you don't see a rise, a lot of time you're on the front end or the back end of the hatch. It's good to kind of check that out and good for searching out. So anyway, that's a couple of ways. So we went through the nymph. We talked about it right quick. Then we went through fishing them under a dry. Now we're going to talk about fishing one or multiple soft tackles on a swing. Now this is like it's like so this is like cooking ribs. So I cooked some ribs yesterday, and thanks to Alan for helping me on those. And there are a lot of ways to cook ribs. If you get on YouTube, you can find multiple ways of cooking ribs, and I cook them on a Weber kettle. So we did the 3-2-1 method yesterday, 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. And if you want to look that up, that's a good way to do it. And that seems to work the best for me. This is very much like swinging a soft tackle. Swinging a soft tackle really is one of the better ways for me personally to catch fish. Now we had to stop the boat and do all that stuff, but if you're waiting, this is a killer way to do it. So swinging soft tackle just seems to work better. I might swing one, and I might swing multiple. So let's talk about one. Um, let's just take a minute here and casting distance when you're swinging a soft tackle. That's your friend. So you can get that distance from where you're standing and start working your way out away from your body. I like to do it on a 45-ish degree angle. And then I start working that shoal or that gravel bar, start pulling them off with gravel bars and rocks and stuff like that. I like to work from close distance to far distance. If you think about it, I do that only because if there's a fish laying closer to me and I cast over him, try to swing, I might swing over him and swing back through him, and the line might spook him. So I try not to do that. But swinging soft hackles just seems to work better that way. So let's talk about fishing multiple here. But check the regulations before you start exploring this technique, because we're talking about more than one or two here. We're talking multiple, meaning 4, 5, 6, hard to cast, long leaders, different weights at different points within your setup. So I like to start with the dry fly closest to me, and try to keep that. Now, this requires you to lift your rod up a little bit, tie that dry fly closest to you on the leader with a tag, so you can bounce it. Think of a bouncing caddis. The next fly on down a few feet, 2, 3, 4 feet out there. Remember, you can adjust these flies back and forth to you. The next fly in line, so the next one further from the dry, we'll call that the number 2 fly. So you got the dry is number 1, the number 2 fly is next. It's an anchor fly, so it's got some weight on it. It's going to pull the string down. So again, that's why you're raising that tip of that rod up a little bit, and you're dancing that. Let's just call it a caddis, but it's that first dry fly. You're kind of dancing that on top of the water while it's trying to be pulled down by that big anchor fly. Next, I like to have a big soft hackle uh, below the anchor fly without weight on it, so that it's not sinking quite as fast. It's more covering the next groove up. So it's close to the weighted fly, but it's actually in the end going to be the second furthest uh, from the bottom of the river. Next, I like to go with a little bit smaller soft hackle than that big one. And what that does is that's up in the water column. And now I'm starting to search for what size are they looking for, and you also start thinking what colors are they searching for. That one's going to be a little higher in the water column than the second one, and even higher than the anchor fly. Then you have the last one. You start getting too many more than that, and you start spending more time untangling stuff than you do anything. And you don't have to do 4 or 5. You can do 2. You can do 1. You can do it however you're comfortable. But uh, that last fly is kind of a smaller soft hackle. Now, when I'm talking small, I don't usually throw size 20, size 22 soft hackles, because you can really get away with fishing a little bit bigger, bigger hooks on soft hackles. You might have a pretty small bug, if you will, but it's going to be possibly on a hook size 2 or 3 times bigger than what you're normally going to tie that bug on. So you got a small bug with a big hook. That's basically what you're looking for. Because remember, those flies are moving similar to a streamer. Also, those fish are running to get it. They're not a lot of times able just to sit there and suck it down like they are a nymph coming to them. They're working pretty good, so they're moving around. So you got one fly hopping like a caddis. The anchor fly gets the flies down. The other flies are working the current and hunting the fish. It works better in broad current, not kind of a hole or deep water. It just doesn't seem to work as well for me there. So 1 to 4 foot of water seems to work best. And once you get your casting rhythm down, you kind of have to open up that loop like you would some streamers and stuff. But once you get that casting rhythm down and where you can really get it out there, remember distance is your friend, covering water is your friend. Most folks have one strip. They're just stripping back. You walk in the water, you cast out there, you got one strip, one trick pony, just a strip, boom, strip, boom, strip, boom, strip the same distance, the same speed every time. And if you see them, they're looking down, changing bugs a lot of times. Their heads down. If you watch them, watch the people that are fishing, they've got that one strip. So they have elected to go back and change bugs. Don't forget to adjust your strip. Maybe you might try different strips after each cast 4 or 5 times in a row. However you decide to do it. Swing one time, wrist strips the next, hand twist the next, strip, pause the next, twitch the rod tip from time to time, mend sometimes, don't mend other times. Try all those different techniques until you get into a rhythm. Now, it's good to have a uh, kind of a system. Like I might go swing one time, wrist strips the next, hand twist the next. And what I'm doing there is I'm just slowing that bug down more and more and more. Twitch the rod from time to time. So you can do this with like a jerk strip, but maybe not quite so as violent as you would with a streamer. Um, just try to get some system that you can duplicate so you can remember, okay, this time he hit or she hit the hand twist. Oh, okay, twice. Hit the hand twist. Colors, all that stuff. We can move on to that. You can change colors out all day long. You can change for beads, weighted, unweighted. Some of them have foam in them, so they're trying to dance around. I mean, there's just all kinds of soft tackles are actually fascinating when you look at them. You can fish them behind a streamer a lot of times. A lot of times you can fish them in front of a streamer, so it's like a yellow streamer and a soft tackle above it. That's, oh, it's a brown trout chasing a bug. I don't know if that's what the fish sees, but again, we're kind of theorizing on what we think. So think about soft tackles. There's some really good stuff on YouTube besides what we're doing here for sure. That'll kind of help you get started, kind of engage your brain. You might want to go back and listen to this and hear it again. So I've got a certain type of rod that I really like to take and use whenever I'm doing soft tackles. I like to use like a 3 to 4 weight rod or a super soft 5 weight. Really works good, like a glass rod or something like that. You have to really slow your cast down though if you go into that rod. Anything with a softer flex, and then you think about it, I've got a lot of weight out there, a lot of mass to carry. Even though they're little bugs, there's more of them. It's you had to open your loop up and all that. So still, you need a quality casting line that'll get them out there. And also remember, distance doesn't really hurt you at all. It helps you here once you start working out toward the middle or back toward the bank, however you decide you want to fish. Uh, a little bit of distance never hurts. So just remember that. So, how do I know if this is working or not? How do I know if the fish are going to eat? You will know. Even a little fish feels huge when it hits. It's amazing. Um, and if you're swinging them, not trying to dance a dry, I mean, you got your rod tip down in that instance. So let me back up just a minute, just so that people understand this. If I'm trying to dance a dry off of 4 or 5 or one below it, a dry off a tag off of my top fly, you're gonna have your rod tip up and dancing that caddis. Let's just call it dancing the caddis. If I'm just simply stripping fly or flies, you want that rod tip down. Boy, it's hard to get people to remember to put that rod tip down when they're first starting out. Um, Whenever they're doing anything, it's like even stripping streamers, it's tough to. They want to work it with the rod tip up, which comes a little later in our program. Uh, um, the way that we do things. There are some retrieves and stuff where you use the rod up in the air a little more, but trying to keep them down. Even nymphing, same thing. If we're nymphing under an indicator in the boat, it's really kind of hard to get them to put that rod down. All right, I'm gonna pause here. There we go. Just had got a little tinge in my throat. Let me take a drink. I hear the dogs down there too. They're awake, so this is they haven't barked yet, but I can hear them sniffing around outside the door here. Um, so anyway, a little bit of distance, keeping that rod tip down, swinging those soft hackles without the dancing caddis type, covering water. It's almost like you see these folks on that are using the spay rods. They'll cast downstream, retrieve it, swing it, do all that stuff. Uh, Move down 4 or 5 feet, pick it up, cast it, swing it, strip it, do that a couple times, move downstream a few more feet. I kind of took um, that that type of structure for me works really well, and I've done that probably, gosh, for years. Whenever I wade, I hadn't waded as much, so I move the boat a little bit sometimes when we do this, but you've just got just whatever your system is, do that. And if it's not working, change one or two things. Um, you'll know when they're going to hit, and you'll know what's working and what's not. I promise you, it's a lot of fun to get a hit on a soft tackle. But remember, 2 eats don't make a trend. So you might get an eat or two, and you think, okay, I'm on it. But 3 eats, you're getting somewhere. You're starting to get somewhere, and you can start fine tuning it throughout the day. Sometimes those hatches are over quick, so you don't, you need to be rotating through whatever your flies, wherever your tag is, lengthening, shortening those tippets and that sort of thing. But just start getting a system in your mind. Go steal somebody else's system. You steal mine. If you want to talk about it, let me know. You can get on YouTube. You can steal somebody else's system and start working through that. Especially in the spring, you'll start working through it, and it'll be a little bit better because more bugs. A lot of times it's easier to wade in the spring, and a lot more people are out there in the spring. You can't cover quite as much distance, but that's a good way to start your fishing in the spring. You'll find that the soft hackles will work there right after stocking periods. They work really good. You can catch two or three at a time on that program that I was talking about with multiple flies. A lot of fun. Make sure your knots are good. Go back and tie your knots too. By the way, let me stop right there. If you're not practicing tying your knots and you're a 1 or 2 years into fly fishing, and I'm talking about not 1 or 2 times a year for 1 or 2 years. I'm talking about your first or second year in, and you're fishing, trying to get it dialed in. If you're not practicing tying your knots to where you can tie them almost in the dark or in the dark, you need to be working on that. That just is absolutely critical, especially when you're tying multiple flies. And you're not going to get it right every time. I've had knots come untied, and it's tough. So check your knots, and I recommend, and I do this from time to time too. After a few casts, check your knots again. That's very helpful. So just a little. That's a tip from the pro knot people, whoever they are. Um, so anyway, soft hackles, excellent way to fish, excellent way to catch fish, excellent way to catch multiple fish sometimes and impress your buddies. So I suggest go out there and try it, get you a system, start working on it, steal somebody else's system, start working on them, buy multiple. I kind of walk through what's out there, so use that. But yeah, get out there and fish some soft tackles, swing it, just a swing. And didn't John Anderson have a he did. It was John Anderson had a song called Swinging. That's kind of what you're doing. Anyway, thanks for joining us on this episode. Share it with a friend. Also, you can catch us on YouTube. Leave a like, click to follow. You just listen to Soft Hackles on Southeastern Fly. See you next time.